Hello, I'm Barbara Peters, bringing you another episode in the Criminal Calendar. Once again, the words criminal calendar are really not correct for the guest we have today, novelist James Lee Burke. So I don't think of him as a crime writer or a mystery writer, but novelist.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure, Jim. I was thinking on my way down here today that you and I met, this is now June, but it was about 2 months ago.
That's right.
We had a conversation in New York at the Sheraton.
That's right.
Where we were all dressed up. My God, you were actually in black tie, weren't you?
Blue tie, actually, over in the white trash section.
Anyway, Jim was there as a guest of the Mystery Writers of America because he was, at that moment, a nominee for the best mystery novel of 1997, and lo, at the end of the evening, emerged the winner.
Well, it was a great honor. It was, really fine and special event.
And in fact, it was your second.
That's right. Second time the work received the Edgar's Best Crime Novel. First was in '89 for Black Cherry Blues.
Which was your third Dave Riba show. And actually,
That's
that was
correct.
the year I started the bookstore, so I wasn't there. But this time around, in April, the novel that you won for, Cimarron Rose, is not a Dave Riba show novel, but in fact, you had written about Billy Bob Holland, an attorney from the Hills Country in Texas.
That's correct. That novel is my most biographical. It's based on old people I knew many years ago, but I can, in truth, say I waited 40 years to write it. It's based on the Holland family, my mother's family, and we meet a drover in there who goes up the Chisholm Trail. He's a historical figure inside a contemporary story. But the drover was my great-grandfather, Sam Morgan Holland, who was a gunfighter, and he had his problems with alcohol, and he was a violent man. He shot 8 or 9 men. He was doing Reconstruction, but eventually he became a Baptist preacher. And so part of the novel is his story. I used his actual diary.
There are extracts from it in the
Yes.
book. You were born in Houston?
That's right.
And so it seemed to me that part of the reason that you wrote the story, as you say, is that it was a chance to do a little family history and autobiography. But one of the other things that struck me when I was rereading it was that it also gives you a chance to talk about parenting, and especially fathers and sons. Because in your Robichaux novels, certainly an important element is Dave's relationship with his adopted daughter, Alifair, the little
right.
Salvadorian girl that he names, whom he names for his mother. Is Alifair not
It's Dave Robichaux's grandmother.
grandmother?
And that was my grandmother. Her name was Alifair, and my daughter's name is Alifair.
Well, it's a father-daughter thing, but I was wondering if one of the reasons that perhaps you wrote Cimarron Rose was to give you a chance to explore fathers and sons.
Well, I think, yes, in part. The story of in Cimarron Rose, the central story, is about the relationship between Billy Bob Holland, who's an ex-Texas Ranger, and his son, who was born out of wedlock, who gets involved in he's charged with a terrible crime that he did not commit, a rape and a murder. And Billy Bob ends up defending his son. And of course, the son has never been recognized publicly by Billy Bob. It's a peculiar relationship, but I think it's a fine story. The story also deals with the Rose of Cimarron, who was the drover's girlfriend up in the Cherokee Strip. They're two parallel stories. The story moves in and out of time. I think this is the best book I've published. I believe Sunset Limited's the best in the Dave Robichaux series, but Cimarron Rose is the best thing I've had in print. The sequel is titled Heartwood, and it's the best thing I ever wrote. It's coming out next year.
Excellent. I wondered, in fact, that was going to be one of my questions, is if you were going to continue with Billy Bob as a character in the Texas series. So we can look for what, alternating books maybe, or just whenever they strike?
Far. Yeah.
But one of the things I think is especially interesting in Cimarron Rose, the irony between Lucas is literally a bastard, but not. He's actually a nice kid.
Yeah, he is.
And the boy who, in theory, is not the bastard turns out to be a jerk. the actual bastard. And there's an interesting parallel in that Billy Bob redeems his son, while another leading character in the novel loses his. I thought that was especially well done, the conclusion of the book. And that's a theme that you seem to explore fairly often, is justice, many faces.
Yes, well, is any person who works in the legal system, in law enforcement, in defense law and prosecution, I think they'd all agree that the system we have is the best in a world that's not a perfect one. But very often, the hand of justice eventually works from somewhere else, in my view, that in courtrooms we attempt to get at the truth. Unfortunately, the legal system is governed by money. Its presence or its absence governs the outcome of most trials. That's not a cynical statement, it's just a human truth. I'm against capital punishment for that reason, for other reasons, theological ones as well. But I'm 61, and in my lifetime I've never known of an instance in which a wealthy man has been put to death. It may have happened, but I don't know about it. They're always poor. I mean, maybe they've committed heinous crimes and they're depraved and pathological, but pathology doesn't know income.
There is an interesting trial in the book, and I think one could say that the trial has the proper outcome. But unfortunately, a trial and the results of it don't embrace all of the villains and all of the punishments that are necessary to really bring the book to its conclusion. I like the fact, too, that the justice in part, well, not in part, that the justice results from the internal character, from not from something that's imposed upon the bad guy, but from something within him that almost forces him to rush towards his own doom. Literally, in fact, in Cimarron Rose, he rushes towards his own doom.
Yeah. Well, I believe evil always consumes itself. It's a matter of time. And it's in not only the nature of the universe, it's certainly in the human soul. But Dave Robichaux indicates something to the reader about his feelings toward evil, that most of what we call criminals or recidivists are people who break into jails, not out of them. They look for authority. They look almost in a Freudian way for a paternal figure in the form of gun bulls or police officers or cops, social workers, prison psychiatrists. These are the only people whom they'll ever meet who will take them seriously in all probability, and they know it. However, there's a minority of people who thread their way in and out of the fabric of society, who are indeed wicked. And there are three theories about the origins of that kind of criminal or psychopathic behavior, that it's environmental in origin or it's genetic. And Dave Robichaux adds a third theory, that there are people who come out of either good or bad environments, it becomes irrelevant at a certain point, who reach a moment of choice where of their own volition they step across a line and deliberately murder the light of God in their soul. They eradicate his thumbprint from the soul, as Dave says. It's a conscious choice, and they enter the kingdom of darkness. And we've all known them, but they happen to, as a rule, to be quite intelligent. They make good mid-level management people sometimes.
And so oftentimes they also have money, right?